Okay, Nick and Andy, we are in the last 16 of the UEFA Champions League. Love this format change this year. It's been absolutely sensational. And some surprises as well as we get into the last 16 with some minnows, upsets galore, I think it's pretty fair to say, in that knockout phase round. So we're going to pull up a table here of the teams who have been eliminated. And then we're going to look at the last 16 teams remaining and kind of group them into the favourites, some dark horses, some teams we need to see a bit more from, and then some of those surprise packages that could go the whole way and win the whole thing. So let's start with some of the surprise packages. Let's start from bottom to top, Nick Mendola. We had some really good performances in the knockout round from the likes of Club Bruges, PSV Eindhoven, Feyenoord, all knocking out big Italian teams in Atalanta, Juventus, and AC Milan, respectively. And Benfica as well. I think a bit of a surprise package. They always produce players, always seem to get to kind of this stage of the competition, but they're a fun team as well. So I've really loved it. Those teams being kind of consequential and feeling like they belong more in the Champions League, having more games and being able to really feel their way into a tournament. It seems to have benefited those kind of teams, and they've caught them out. So what do you think of the surprise packages there? Any favourites that could really go on a bit of a run and excite us even more?
You know, of that group, none that I would keep out of the dark horses, because there isn't, and again, I don't want to gloss over an entire subset of teams there, but what divides, say, an Aston Villa from them? And it's Aston Villa having one of the best goalkeepers in the world. So there's not that single bright light on those teams that I think can absolutely take over an entire tie, because that's the thing we're looking at now, right? So all of those teams, for me, they qualify as surprise packages. They are not quite dark horses. We're grateful for them being here. But for example, take Club Bruges. The reason it worked for them, they were the same team every game for 8 games. Yes. You know, it was consistent. 10. It was consistent. But do I believe that them showing up against a monster team and just being consistent is going to be enough? No, and I think that's what we saw when Real Madrid played Manchester City. Those are teams that can win any game, but class wins out over time.
All right, producer FA, let's put Club Bruges in surprise packages, along with Feyenoord and along with PSV. Eindhoven and Benfica as well. Andy, any other teams you want to add to that kind of bracket there?
Lille, how do we feel?
Lille, probably surprise package, although they've got through to the last 16 automatically.
Yeah, it's true. They were one of the better teams in the league phase. But I don't know. We get to this point of the tournament, and you start to look for familiarity. I think, and so I'll say they could be a dark horse to get to, maybe into the quarterfinals or the semifinals, depending on how things break in the draw and everything. But they certainly don't. They don't have the one individual player who can take a game over. Who can?
Jonathan David, could be the guy.
I like him. We're talking UEFA Champions League, though.
True.
Yeah. They have Mbappe, Ethan Mbappe.
That's right. Okay, so let's move on to those dark horses then, because there are Aston Villa, Dortmund, 100%. Atletico Madrid. I mean, it's weird to call. Villa
is a capital D dark horse. Like, they should almost not be a dark horse, but they have to be, because they haven't been there. This is new ground for almost every single one of those players. But think about from the outside, if you were to slap a different logo on that team. Luka Dean is a fantastic player. Emi Martinez is, I believe, still the reigning world goalkeeper of the year. Maybe I'm getting my years mixed up. I could be. Watkins. They've brought in Rashford, looked quite good the other day against Liverpool. Asensio's been on the stage before. Emery is a master in tournaments. So I think this is the definition of a dark horse, in that they haven't quite been there, but you just wouldn't be stunned. And the draw really might work out for them too.
And Andy, Dortmund obviously have had a tough season, but they're here again in the last 16. They got to the final unexpectedly last season. So some changes, but largely a group of players that have been there and done it before and kind of know how to navigate their way through a tournament like this. Again, I think dark horses is fair enough with them, given that experience. Yeah. But Atletico Madrid, for me, are in kind of almost in between dark horses and
No. They're not in
no?
between. They're a flawed contender for sure because they have Diego
Okay.
Simeone. They know what to do. This time of year, this competition, you get to the knockout rounds, you simply do not want to see Atletico Madrid come up, out of the bowl of balls when they do the draw, because you're going to have a miserable 180 minutes, maybe 210 minutes. There might not be any goals scored. You're probably going to lose at that point of the tournament unless you're one of the true contenders. So I would put them in with the flawed contenders, and maybe even say they're slightly between that line and the next line, closer to flawed, not quite full contender.
Is Leverkusen either a dark horse or a favorite? Like, to me, they're not a flawed competitor. After what they did last year in reaching the Europa League final, they kept almost every one of their players. Wirtz is in demand. Jonathan Tah is in demand. I don't think they're flawed. I just think in a sort of hyper trophy carrying version of what Villa is, I think they're either a dark horse or a favorite. I wouldn't know where to put them.
I would go dark horses, I think. I still think that they're a pretty young team and they haven't played in the Champions League that often the last few years, given the rebuild. So I think right now I'm pretty happy putting them in that bracket. Because again, like you said, with the talented attackers they have, they can break out and they can beat pretty much any team in this competition. So I think that's the definition of a dark horse, right? They could go all the way. But I still don't think that they're squad depth yet. And we've seen that in the Bundesliga this season as they try and follow up that title. And
they're not catching anybody off guard this season. Everybody's fully aware of what it is this year. It worked last year.
In terms of the flawed contenders, then, I mean, I need to see more from Bayern Munich. I mean, they only just scraped past Celtic and pretty lucky at the end to do that and gave us some big chances. So I think with Harry Kane, obviously, he's got a bit of an injury issue. If he is out long term, which he might, this time of the season, we've seen over the years, he does tend to pick up similar injuries. I struggle where the goals are going to come from the way that they play under Vincent Kompany. They dominate games. We know that possession, but I would put them in flawed contenders because they are good enough to win the Champions League and they are top of the Bundesliga for a reason. Nick, do you agree with that?
If they're there, then Arsenal have to be there because there are more questions for me in Arsenal than there are for Bayern Munich. Bayern has been underwhelming in the Champions League, but just destroying the Bundesliga, who, aside from the Premier League, I don't know that there's a better top to bottom league in the world. So I want Arsenal as a flawed contender. I feel bad for saying this. I just haven't seen a lot of Inter Milan this year. So I want to leave that in your hands. And I also want to put PSG as a flawed contender. Maybe the fact that they don't have that name this year and that their names are growing is something. But to me, it would be difficult to keep them in the favorite status. So I'm looking at our bottom right now, and just the only thing I'm worried about is where we put Inter Milan.
Yeah. Andy, I've seen a bit of them. I don't think I feel strongly enough to put them in favorites. I think they're probably still under flawed contenders. Because I believe when they are on, they will just do the job on you. You'll lose 1 or 2-0 to them and not really know what happened and never really have a sniff in the game. And defensively, we know how strong they are. We know the 3-5-2, it works great. But I still think the forwards, if Lautaro's on, he's on. If not, I don't know how much help he's going to get. It's just a bit inconsistent in attack for me. And that's the only issue I have with Inter Milan. And I'm pretty happy to put them in flawed contenders.
They'll be a tough out for whoever they come up against every single round, but someone will get them out of there. I do think for kind of all the reasons that you point to there. All of these teams here in the flawed contenders, there's all a big question mark about something. Arsenal, it's the injuries and it's center forward. Bayern, like you say, it's Harry Kane. PSG, the lack of star. Inter, somebody to take over the game, and so any of these teams could beat anybody on any given day, and that's why they're considered somewhat a contender. But it's going to have to take their absolute A+ game and probably a B- game for many of the 3 teams that are still down at the bottom that we haven't placed yet.
Yeah, what about these, Nick? The obvious favorites, right? I mean, Liverpool, Barcelona were excellent during the group stage, breezed through to the last 16 automatically, and then Real Madrid just ripped apart Man City. Mbappe scores a hat-trick, and you're thinking, here we go again, same old story. They're clicking into mid-season form at the perfect time. all three in there. Any arguments with that?
No arguments. I hate to say this, but I think there's a clear third, and maybe a clear first. I think you might go Real Madrid, Barcelona, Liverpool. And the reason I put Liverpool third is because it is still a first year in the system, which is also, it's true for other teams here in this situation. But they lean so much on Mo Salah. So I had the recap for Aston Villa, Liverpool, and I realized how darn good he's been this year. He leads the Premier League in goals. He leads the Premier League in assists. He is 3 goal contributions from his best. And he was, the year when he was at his best, he was a Ballon d'Or contender. So they are leaning a lot on a magnificent player. And that's not to say the Konate, Van Dijk, back pairing isn't great. They're very good. This plug and play midfield they've pulled off. But I just look at Real Madrid and Barcelona, and what I don't see is with all due respect to this player who's fantastic, I don't see a Curtis Jones getting meaningful minutes. I don't see a Harvey Elliott coming off the bench. I see more than one absolutely elite attacking player. Rafinha and Robert Lewandowski are absolutely phenomenal. Mbappe, Bellingham, absolutely phenomenal. Liverpool, it's Mo Salah and some very, 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 very good places. But we've seen Luis Diaz disappear for a stretch. We've seen Jota disappear for a stretch. We've seen Nunez, if he could score, he'd have 150 goals this year, but he can't finish. So to me, it is so much Salah that I have to have them a tier down, but they're not really flawed. So yeah, a favorite, but not flawed, right?
Yeah, Andy, you agree?
I think in this very moment right now, what we're seeing from them, I do a little bit, but I think we're seeing a bit of a dip right now from Liverpool, and it was so good to start the season. This is kind of what we expected from them to begin, right? Like Slot hit the ground running so quickly for them that it was a little bit of a surprise, and so now maybe they're going through some of those growing pains. I do still like the squad. I do still think that there are individuals that in a moment can do something and can pop up with the big goal when they need it, but no one that's going to Nick's point, to carry them the way that Salah has been doing. And on Barcelona, I have a little bit of trust issue with all the kids in that team, just, for the simple fact of they don't know what they don't know. I think they'll make a nice little run, but they're going to go out at some point 8-6 over the 2 legs. And it's going to be incredible to watch, but they simply don't defend. They don't have a midfielder, who looks in there to break up play or control the game. It's just, how many goals can we score? And I love that, but it's probably not the best way to win the Champions League this season.
Yeah, and it's, looking at the potential for the last 16 as well, it's just the way it's shaping up. There's going to be some huge quarterfinal ties as well. It's going to be incredible. And yeah, Real Madrid, we mentioned it there, are just kind of hitting their stride exactly like we knew. And Mbappe, after taking a little bit of time, a very small amount of time to warm up in Madrid, it now looks like he's going to be the difference and the extra dimension that we all knew he was going to be eventually. But now just that front four of Bellingham, Rodrigo, Vinicius, and Mbappe in a tournament situation, I really don't know how you stop them over 2 legs or a final for the entire game.
At some point, they're going to have some senior center backs available as well, and that team's going to get better.
Yeah, so that's our favorites as ranking the top 16 teams who are remaining in the Champions League. Head over to Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com for all the latest from what is a wonderful competition, but I think it's been made even better by this new format, the new knockout round. And now we're into the old school last 16. Let's see how it all plays out.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Lowe, and as we head towards the end of an exciting Premier League season, make sure you like and subscribe on the NBC Sports YouTube channel for more content like this.